Do you like Paper Mario? And do you hate Nintendo for not making another one in years and suddenly releasing a remake of the second one on the Switch? Then Born of Bread is the right game for you. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and start at the beginning. First of all, I never finished a Paper Mario game. Yeah, shame on me, but it's true. But even if I didn't play through a single Paper Mario game, I am still a fan of the series. I made first contact with Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door when I watched a full Let's Play of it. And a bit later I also watched a Let's Play of Super Paper Mario. I also tried Paper Mario 1 for myself through the Nintendo Switch Online replay system. But I never finished it because my membership ran out in the middle of the playthrough and I didn't want to rebuy it again because Nintendo is too money hungry and I don't want to support that kind of business anymore. I also watched a Let's Play of every Paper Mario game after the first one, so then I was done with the franchise. But I knew Nintendo wouldn't make another good Paper Mario soon, but another company did. Wild Art Games made people's dreams come true and tried to make a game just like Paper Mario. But maybe they did this a bit too well. Let's talk about the presentation for a second. This game is unbelievably beautiful, especially in the first few chapters. The final one is a bit lacking for me. The game uses the Unreal Engine to put some beautiful dynamic lights into their scenes. The game just pops with the bright colors and lights, and it can build different moods in different places. What also really stands out is the soundtrack. The tracks sound all very familiar because they have the same style as Paper Mario 2. And they are just really fun to listen to. So yeah, the game is very beautiful to look at, but does it play well? And like a Paper Mario game? Running around in the overworld is pretty fun, especially because they went ham with their platforming sections. Like this is an RPG, not a jump and run. But if you run into an enemy, it's very familiar. Like in any Paper Mario game, you have to time your attacks and blocks to do more damage or get damaged less yourself. The window to do the inputs perfectly is very generous and you will do it perfectly almost every time. There's also an audience via this live chat and it's a cool addition but doesn't affect the battles too much. Unlike Paper Mario, where they can throw stuff at you and the bombs can explode. The system how much damage you deal is also very complex and I didn't understand it at all. But you don't have to, because you will eventually find an attack which will do the job just fine. The system how much damage you receive is pretty simple though. Set amount of damage and if you block it will do 1 damage less. You also have partners in the game which are pretty fleshed out, with skill trees and their own story side quests. They also are very relevant in fights because you can actually attack with them, unlike other partners. You can also just use them as personal shields if you use the defense card. Sadly, most enemies besides some bosses can't attack their partners, so you know they will stay alive, but you won't in most cases. But the game isn't difficult at all in normal mode because I or my partners never died. So the fighting system is pretty fleshed out with partners, weapons, special attacks and badges. But you also need interesting enemies. But this is the point where everything falls apart. Most enemies have one attack. Some have 2, and even bosses have just 2. There is also no variety in the enemies. There are like 15 different ones, which you will fight the whole game through. So the fights get pretty boring after a while. Sadly, the bosses aren't that much better because, like I said, they have like 2 attacks and no special traits at all. You just hit them until they are dead. The game also still contains many bugs, but most of them fix themselves by going through a loading zone or starting the next battle. Sometimes the camera freaks out, which makes you see a room you aren't even in, and sometimes the rooms just don't load. You can also still see the default Unreal Engine hitbox in this attack, so the bugs aren't that bad but annoy quite a bit. But maybe the story can push this game a little more. You play as Loaf, which is a living piece of bread baked by Papa Baker. But Papa Baker gets accused of disturbing the dinner of the Queen and gets put in jail. You now have to free him and get evidence that he is innocent with your new friend a raccoon, which name is probably different in your country because I played the game in German. Here he is called Lind. But now the video will contain spoilers, so I recommend not watching any further if you didn't play the game already. Good, so if you are still here, that means you probably know the story already, so I won't go into details again. If you don't know the Paper Mario games, you probably found the story quite good, with many interesting twists and turns. If you do know the story of the Paper Mario games, you will find a lot of parallels between the games. Maybe even too many. Let me give some examples. You land in a forest after the bad guys show up. That happens at the start of Origami King. You meet a detective and you investigate a strange curse. Both happen in the 1000-year door, but not at the same time. One of your partners is first an enemy of yours, but you can convince them to be on your side. That happens in the 1000-year door as well. As you can see, there are many story beats taken from other Paper Mario games, but mushed together to change it a bit. There a new problem arises. Paper Mario is usually a much longer game with way more chapters and interesting places to explore. For me, there was too much story stolen from other Paper Mario games, so eventually the game had no more surprises for me. At least you are doing something different in every chapter and not just running from Crystal Star to Crystal Star. I also found it a bit weird that the game didn't use the paper style at all in the gameplay or story, which seems to me they just went with this style because it will feel more like Paper Mario. But let's stop ranting and get to the conclusion. Born of Bread tries its hardest to be the next Paper Mario, but it just became Paper Mario 2 with a bread man instead of a plumber. Visually the game looks very good, especially in the beginning, and the soundtrack slaps. The combat is very complex in some parts, but way too simple in others. The story is just story beats from other Paper Marios mushed together to create something new, which is such a shame because at the beginning the game felt like it would go in another direction with the whole proof that Papa Baker is innocent thingy. The game is also a bit pricey for its nature. Overall, the conclusion sounds very negative, but you can have fun in this game. I certainly did, but I wanted to point out the bad things very clearly. But it certainly isn't a bad game. Just if you are a Paper Mario fan and you have expectations, you will sadly get a bit disappointed. But if you liked this video, you may want to check out some other ones or even subscribe to the channel. If you want to play my own game with a paper character, download Sky Scratcher for free in the description. Bye bye.